Hey guys, welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt. This episode of Tabletop Tales is entitled Facing Your Fears, and I haven't done one of these in a while, so I've kind of been storing up some different experiences I've had at the table so that I can do new episodes of Tabletop Tales. So this tale involves a campaign, a Pathfinder campaign, that we were playing in a year or two ago, and the campaign was called Into the Mouth of Madness. My buddy Darren was DMing, and we had 4 or 5 players in the party. I was playing my swamp druid, Vald, who I've talked about in previous videos, but Vald is essentially, he was a human who was raised by savage swamp elves. And he has a real affinity for creepy things. He's sort of like a spider-themed druid. He's got a cloak made of spider webs that is filled with spiders, so he's sort of in this symbiotic relationship with the spiders. He summons a lot of spiders. He climbs on walls, does all kinds of kind of gross, swampy, spidery, creepy, crawly things. So he was a lot of fun to play. I played him for quite a few years, or I guess just a couple years. But I managed to get him to about level 12 or 13 when we stopped that campaign. But this was a campaign a little while ago, and it was called Into the Mouth of Madness. And it had to deal with the party was traveling through this canyon. And it became pretty clear to us early on that the canyon was not your typical canyon. And in fact, we had sort of been led into an experiment, we came to find out. It wasn't until we reached the end of this canyon that we figured out that the canyon was actually almost like a marinating pot that the mind flayers were using to get our brains nice and juicy before we would end up at the other side. So this canyon was imbued with magical energy. There was a mineral running through the walls of this canyon that we kept seeing that was essentially messing with our brains. It was like we were almost getting like hallucinations and paranoia, schizophrenia. All kinds of crazy things were happening. It was almost like a Call of Cthulhu type campaign that we were playing. So we're going through this canyon, and we were thinking that the canyon was only going to take about a day to get through, but it ended up taking like a week because time was all kind of screwy within the canyon. So it was me playing Vald, the swamp druid. It was Tila, my fiance, playing Isra, her half-orc barbarian. And we had Chloe playing Mother Gamble, who was a human witch who was secretly a Tengu, but she was using magic to disguise herself. And a few other characters here and there. But this story primarily involves my character, Vald, and Chloe's character, Mother Gamble. So we're in this canyon, and we end up fighting a few sort of typical monsters. I think the first thing we fought was orcs. And then we ended up fighting some bullets, who the bullets were in the canyon walls. So we could see, bullets are basically land sharks. We could see their fins sort of going down the canyon wall, and they would come out of the canyon wall and attack us, and that was kind of a cool encounter. Eventually we came upon a paladin, and the paladin truly believed he was fighting evil. And he had been in the canyon for so long that his mind was completely addled. It was basically gone. He could not rationalize anymore, and he was sort of in this fantasy world where he was fighting evil at all times. And so he perceived us, when we approached him, as evil. He probably saw us as demons in his mind because he had basically lost his mind. He was insane. So we ended up having to kill this paladin, which really affected our dwarven fighter at the time. And it really kind of went downhill from there. And eventually we started having nightmares, and each of us had a thing in our background, our character's background, that the DM used against us here. In a good way. So my character Vald's backstory, he walked with a limp. And the reason why he walked with a limp, very pronounced limp, is because when he was a child and he was first learning to communicate and domesticate these giant spiders that lived in the swamp where he grew up, he sort of got a little overzealous, and the spider bit him in the leg. And the venom was so potent that it actually rotted away a piece of his leg before they were actually able to remove the poison using, alchemy and stuff like that. And so this sort of instilled in him a reverence for nature. The realization that nature is unpredictable, it's chaotic, it's violent, it's predatory, and he respects that. That was part of his whole deal. It was not about the balance of nature. It was about the ferocity of nature. He was all about survival of the fittest. Only the strongest survive. And so that sort of taught him to not only be strong, but also revere nature in a very real, very respectable way. And then Mother Gamble was secretly a Tengu, and she longed to fly free once again. And she was a witch, and she had a magic broom that she could fly around on. I know, very witchy. And so the DM took these two little plot hook nuggets and used them against us here in this canyon. What ended up happening was, all of a sudden, Vald was acutely aware of the spiders in his cloak, and he could hear them chittering and crawling, and he could feel their legs on his skin, and he could just remember the spider's fangs digging into his leg when he was a kid, and he couldn't deal with it anymore, and he had to take his cloak off. He had to not be around spiders anymore. And I remember that was a really cool moment to role play, because it was like, this is something that had defined my character. It was a very real piece of him, and he took his spider silk cloak off and couldn't wear it anymore. And whenever we encountered a bug or a spider, a centipede, he was terrified of it, and that was really, really rewarding to be able to role play that. At the same time, Mother Gamble had all of a sudden, she felt like she was so high up off the ground, and she was falling. She felt like she was falling, and so she couldn't ride her broom anymore. It was crippling. And so all of a sudden, Mother Gamble develops a fear of heights and a fear of flying, and Vald develops severe arachnophobia. And so Mother Gamble has this broom, and I have this spider silk cloak. The cloak allowed me to use spider climb at any time. It's an actual magic item in D&D. It's called the Cloak of Arachnida. And it basically allows you to do spider climb at will. So I could clamber up walls all day long. And then Mother Gamble's broom, she could stamp it on the ground, and it allowed her to fly. Both of us kind of relied on these magic items quite a bit. And when it came time to scale this wall, I had this cloak I wasn't wearing. Mother Gamble had this broom she wasn't riding. And we look at each other. And I hand her the cloak. She hands me the broom. And we trade magic items until we can get over whatever is affecting our minds. So, for a short amount of time, my huge human swamp druid is flying around on a magic broom, and Mother Gamble, this old, decrepit lady, is climbing on the walls like a spider. And it was just one of those moments where the DM was completely caught off guard. It's like, oh, that's perfect. I love that. It was almost nonverbal. Chloe and I just looked at each other across the table, and we were like, you want to trade? And we just traded magic items. It was just perfect. And that sticks out to me as a very rewarding role-play experience. And the reason being is the Dungeon Master, Darren, actually looked at our characters' backstories, at our background, at the little plot hooks that make us who we are. And he brought that into the game in a very real way. And he made us confront those things that had happened in our past. He made us confront our fears. And worse than that, he made our fears the things that we loved the very most. Another example is Isra, my fiance's half-orc barbarian character. She grew up with human parents and was always made to look more human, and like made to wear dresses and things like that. And they basically made her like keep her orcness under the surface. And so she became a barbarian later in life because she wanted to be, she wanted to let her blood boil. She wanted to use that anger. And the DM made her feel small, made her her axe in her hand looked like a teddy bear. She felt like a small child in a dress. And so she just felt completely helpless, and she felt like, I'm not strong anymore. I can't lift this. I feel like I have no strength in my arms. It's like in a dream when you punch somebody and you feel like you can't, why am I not punching? Why am I not strong? Why is my fist so slow? It was like that, but when she was awake. And so we were all made to confront these awful things that totally tied into our characters. And I just remember it being a really fun, really rewarding role-play moment. And definitely my favorite moment of the entire campaign was Mother Gamble and I just looking at each other and trading magical items so we could get up this cliff. It was so perfect. So eventually we got to the end of the canyon after days and days and days and lots of different puzzles and encounters and things like that. And we ended up defeating the Mind Flayers, who were basically marinating us in this canyon, getting us nice and crazy so they could suck our brains out of our heads. We ended up defeating them and freeing the canyon from the madness that had clutched it for so long. So I just thought that was kind of a cool story, and it might give you some ideas for your own game. If you're a dungeon master, it might encourage you to look into your players' backstories and use those elements in your own campaign. Your adventures will be stronger for it, I guarantee you. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. More Tabletop Tales to come, I'm sure. Take care, and happy gaming all.